Not the dramatic kind you see in movies where someone runs through rain and screams your name like the world is ending. I mean the quiet kind, the simple kind, the kind where you're sitting on a couch and your chest feels heavy and you want to say, "Can you hold me?" But your throat locks like it's protecting you from something. I grew up learning that love wasn't something you requested, it was something you hoped for and tried not to ruin. So I learned to be easy, I learned to be fine, I learned to be the kind of person you don't have to worry about, the kind of person who doesn't make noise, doesn't need much, doesn't take up space. People call that independence. But it's not always independence. Sometimes it's just survival in a nice outfit. I didn't come from a home where feelings were honored, feelings were tolerated. If they were convenient, if they were small, if they didn't slow anyone down. If I cried, I was told I was being dramatic. If I got angry, I was told I was disrespectful. If I got quiet, nobody noticed. So eventually I stopped trying to translate myself into a language nobody wanted to speak. I became fluent in silence. I became fluent in swallowing words halfway down. I became the person who smiles, nods, and says, "It's okay," even when it isn't. Especially when it isn't. And for a long time, it worked. People liked me. Teachers called me mature. Friends called me chill. Partners called me low maintenance. And deep down, that felt like a compliment, because it meant I wasn't too much. It meant I was safe to keep. But here's the truth I didn't realize until you. Being easy to love is not the same as being loved. Sometimes it just means you've learned how to hide your needs so well that people forget you have a heart at all. Then you happen. Not like a thunderstorm, more like a sunrise, quiet at first, almost ordinary. And then suddenly everything in me was lit up. We met in the most normal way. No fireworks, no soundtrack, just real life. A room, a conversation, a moment where our eyes held too long and neither of us rushed to break it. I remember thinking, that's strange, not the attraction. That part was easy. The strange part was how calm my body felt. Like it recognized something before my brain could label it. Like my nervous system whispered, "This is not danger." I didn't trust it. I was used to people who felt like roller coasters, highs and lows and uncertainty that kept me performing. I was used to relationships where love came with conditions I had to guess. But you weren't a roller coaster, you were steady. And steady is terrifying when you've been living your whole life bracing for impact. At first, I tried to keep you at a polite distance. Not because I didn't want you, because I did. But wanting someone is risky when you've been taught that wanting is weakness. So I gave you the version of me that everyone else got. The version that's funny. The version that listens well. The version that asks you questions so you don't ask too many about me. I kept my feelings neat, folded, put away in the drawer labeled later. But you didn't treat me like a puzzle to solve. You treated me like a person to understand. And that changes everything. One night we were walking after dinner. The air was cold enough to make our breath visible. You were talking about something random, something that didn't matter, and I laughed, but not all the way, because something in me was heavy. I'd had a rough day. Not the kind where something dramatic happens. Just the kind where life quietly leans on you until you feel bent. I didn't tell you. I was ready to carry it alone like I always did, but you stopped walking, and you looked at me like you could see through the mask, not in a scary way, in a gentle way. You said, "You're here, but you're not here." I tried to brush it off. I'm good. You didn't argue, you didn't push, you didn't lecture me about communication. You just said, "Okay, I believe you." Then you paused and added, "But if there's something under that, I'm here too. Something under that." No one had ever said it like that. Most people either demand the truth immediately or pretend they don't notice at all. But you left the door open without trying to drag me through it. And I didn't know what to do with that kind of patience. It felt unfamiliar. It felt expensive, like something I didn't deserve. We kept walking and my silence stayed between us, but it wasn't hostile. It wasn't punishing. It was just allowed. And that messed me up because I was used to silence being a weapon. Silence in my past was the sound of someone withdrawing love. It was the sound of you disappointed. It was the sound of figure it out on your own. But with you, silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space, like you trusted me to speak when I was ready, and somehow that made me want to speak more. Not that night, not yet, but the seed was planted. And seeds are dangerous because they grow. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and slowly, without making it a big deal, you started doing these tiny things. Tiny things that were not tiny to me. You remembered what I liked without asking again. You noticed patterns in my moods like you were paying attention to my weather. You checked in after hard days without demanding an explanation. You asked, "How are you really?" And didn't accept the first answer like it was a password. But here's the thing. I wasn't used to being asked twice. When people asked how I was, they wanted the polite version. They wanted the easy answer. They wanted me to confirm that I was convenient. So when you asked again, my heart would panic like, "What do you want from me?" And sometimes I would get irritated, not at you, at the intimacy. Because intimacy is scary when you've survived by staying unreadable. One evening, we were sitting in your car before I got out, just parked, no music, the city outside our windows, moving like a movie. You were looking at me, and I knew you were about to say something honest. My body tensed, because honesty in my past usually meant conflict. Honesty meant consequences. But you said, "I've been thinking about something." I stared at the dashboard like it could save me. You said, "Sometimes you disappear while you're still right here, like you're holding your breath. And I don't want to force you to talk. I just want you to know you don't have to carry everything alone with me." There it was, the moment, the opening, the invitation, and I felt something rise in my throat, a confession, a need, a simple sentence like, "I don't know how to let people in." But my chest tightened, my mouth went dry, my brain started grabbing old scripts. I almost said, "I'm fine." I almost made a joke. I almost changed the subject, because that's what I do when feelings get close enough to touch me. But you were still looking at me, not demanding, not impatient, just present, like you were willing to sit there as long as it took, and something inside me cracked. I whispered, "I don't know how." You blinked. "How what?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know how to ask." Your face softened in a way that made my eyes burn. You didn't say, "Ask for what?" like you wanted to interrogate me. You said, "Okay, we can learn. We can learn." Not "you need to fix that," not "that's weird." Not "why are you like this?" We can learn. Like it was normal, like I wasn't broken, like love could be practiced, not performed. And that's when I realized something. You weren't just offering love, you were offering a different world. A world where needs weren't shameful. A world where emotions weren't inconveniences. A world where asking didn't make you weak, it made you human. I wanted to cry right there, but crying felt like an accident I wasn't allowed to have. So I stared forward, fighting with myself. You waited. Then you said, "Tell me what you're scared will happen if you ask." The question hit me like truth because I knew the answer immediately. I said, "I'm scared you'll think I'm too much." You didn't laugh. You didn't correct me with some fake positivity. You just said, "Thank you for telling me." My throat tightened again. Because "thank you for telling me" is not the response my childhood prepared me for. If I told the truth growing up, it usually meant trouble. But you treated my truth like a gift, and something in me started to unlearn fear. It didn't happen overnight. Healing doesn't happen like a light switch. It happens like a slow dawn. Some days I would open up a little and feel proud. Other days I would shut down and feel guilty. But you didn't punish me for the days I couldn't speak. You didn't make my silence a character flaw. You would just say, "I'm here. Even if you can't find the words today, even if you can't find the words today." You kept making it safe. And safety is a drug when you've lived your whole life in emotional war zones. One day we argued. Not a big argument. Just one of those moments where two people misunderstand each other and their old wounds start driving. I went quiet. I withdrew like I always do. Because when conflict shows up, my body thinks, "Leave before you get left." I started packing up emotionally, getting ready to disappear. And you noticed, you didn't chase me, you didn't yell, you just said calmly, "Hey, don't leave." Not like this. My heart started racing because that sentence used to mean control to me, but your voice didn't have control in it. It had care. I said, "I'm not leaving." You said, "You are. I can feel you leaving." That made me angry, not because you were wrong, because you were right. And being seen like that is terrifying. I snapped, "I don't know what you want from me." You took a breath. "I want you, the real you, even when you're upset, even when you're scared, especially then." My hands started shaking. I didn't want you to see, but you saw anyway. I looked away, jaw tight, fighting tears. And you said something I will never forget. You said, "You don't have to be calm to be loved." My entire life I thought calm was the price of being kept. If I stayed calm, nobody would accuse me of being dramatic. If I stayed calm, nobody would leave. If I stayed calm, I could control the outcome. But you were telling me, I could be messy and still be worthy. I could be emotional and still be safe. I could be real and still be loved. And that kind of permission felt like stepping onto land after drowning quietly for years. I whispered, "I'm scared." You nodded. "I know." I said, "I don't want to need you." You said, "Needing isn't failing. Needing is human." My throat burned. "I don't know how to do this." You said, "Then do it badly with me." But do it with me, do it badly with me. That sentence rewired something in my brain, because I've spent my whole life believing I had to be perfect to be loved. Perfect daughter, perfect friend, perfect partner, no needs, no drama, no mess. But you were telling me love could hold imperfection, that love could hold learning, that love wasn't a reward for good behavior. It was a choice you made for the real person. And slowly, I started to practice. The first time I asked for love, it was small. We were watching something on TV. I was restless. My mind was heavy. I wanted comfort but didn't want to admit it. So I sat there pretending I didn't care. You glanced at me and said, "Want to come closer?" I froze because my instinct was to say, "I'm good," but instead I took a breath and I said quietly, "Yeah." I moved closer. You put your arm around me like it was the most natural thing in the world, and my body relaxed in a way that made me realize how long I'd been holding tension. I didn't even say thank you. I didn't have to. And that's what made it feel like real love. Because real love doesn't make you feel like you owe it. It just gives. Another time, I had a bad day. I didn't want to talk about it. I felt raw. You texted, "How are you?" I stared at my phone. My fingers typed fine automatically. Then I erased it. I stared again. My heart pounded like I was about to do something dangerous. And I typed, "Not good. Can I just be quiet with you tonight?" When you replied, it was instant. "Yeah, come over. You can be quiet here. You can be quiet here." That sentence felt like a blanket. Because usually people only want you around when you're entertaining. But you wanted me even when I had nothing to perform, even when I was quiet. Even when I was heavy that night, I came over and barely spoke. You didn't try to force conversation. You didn't try to fix me. You just sat with me. You made tea. You put on something soft in the background. You existed beside me like it was enough. And I realized this was the love I never learned how to ask for. Not grand gestures, not perfection, just presence, just safety. Just someone saying, "You don't have to be okay to be loved." Months later, I found myself saying things that used to terrify me. "I miss you. I need you. Can you reassure me? Can we talk?" These were normal sentences for other people. For me, they were revolutions. Because every time I said them, I was fighting an old voice inside me that whispered, "Don't be needy. Don't be embarrassing. Don't give them power." But the more I asked, the more you stayed. And the more you stayed, the more those old stories lost their grip. One night, we were lying in bed, lights off, the room quiet like it was holding our breath. I said, "Can I tell you something?" You said, "Always." I swallowed. "Sometimes I feel like I'm waiting for you to change your mind about me." You shifted closer. "Why?" I stared at the ceiling. "Because people have before. They loved me until I was inconvenient, until I was too quiet, or too emotional, or too human. You didn't rush to defend yourself. You didn't say, I would never. You said, that must have been lonely. And something about that made me break, because you didn't make it about you. You made it about me. You made space for the wound. I turned my face toward you in the dark, and I said, I didn't learn how to ask for love. I learned how to deserve it. There was a long pause. Then you said, you don't have to deserve it with me. You can just have it. You can just have it. I started crying quietly, trying to hide the sound. You reached for my hand. You didn't say anything heroic. You just held it like you meant it. And I realized, in that moment, this is what healing looks like. It's not a big speech. It's not a dramatic apology. It's a hand in the dark. It's someone staying. It's someone listening to the sentence behind the sentence. Because when I say I'm fine, what I often mean is I'm scared. When I say it's okay, what I often mean is I don't want to be a burden. When I say do what you want, what I often mean is please choose me. And you started hearing those meanings. You started responding to the real message, not the words I used to protect myself. That's when I knew this wasn't just love, this was learning. This was reparenting parts of my heart that never got to be held properly. This was me unlearning shame, and you never acted like it was work. You never acted like my healing was an inconvenience. You didn't put a timer on my softness. You didn't ask me to hurry up and be okay. You just kept showing up. And slowly, I stopped apologizing for being human. One day, you were running late, just a little late, nothing dramatic. But my chest tightened anyway. Old anxiety rose up fast, like a reflex. My brain started writing horror stories. They forgot. They don't care. You're not important. In the past, I would have swallowed that and acted cold. Or I would have pretended I didn't care and punished you with distance. But that day, I did something new. I texted, hey, my brain is spiraling. I know you're probably just busy, but can you reassure me you're still coming? My finger hovered over send. It felt humiliating. It felt too honest. It felt like handing someone the weapon. But I sent it. And you replied, I'm still coming. Traffic is wild. I'm sorry. I'm here. You're safe. You're safe. I read that sentence and felt my body unclench. Not because traffic stopped, because the fear stopped, because you met my need with kindness. And that was the moment I realized something huge. Asking for love doesn't push the right person away, it reveals them. It shows you who is capable of holding you. It shows you who wants to. You could have replied with annoyance. You could have called me needy. You could have said, why are you like this? But you didn't. You said you're safe. And safety is how love becomes real. Later, when we were together, I told you, I'm embarrassed, I asked. You looked at me and said, don't be. I want you to tell me. I said, but it's not attractive. You smiled softly. It's intimate. Intimate. That word changed everything, because I grew up thinking the only lovable version of me was the impressive version, the strong version, the composed version. But you were teaching me that the most lovable version of me is the honest one, the one that says, I'm scared, the one that says, I need you, the one that stops pretending. And the crazy part is, the more honest I got, the more I felt like myself, not the masked self, not the edited self, the real self. One who laughs too hard sometimes, the one who overthinks, the one who feels things deeply, the one who wants love, not just peace. Then came the day that felt like the final proof. We were at a small gathering, people around, music, smiles, conversations. Someone made a joke at my expense. It wasn't cruel, but it hit something old in me, something tender, something from childhood. I froze, I laughed politely, but inside I shrank. I was about to swallow it like I always did, and you noticed. You leaned in and quietly said, hey, you okay? I wanted to say yes, but my eyes were stinging, so I said the truth. I said, that hurt. You didn't look at me like I was fragile. You didn't look embarrassed. You said, do you want to step outside? I stepped outside, away from the noise. The night air hit my face like a reset. I said, I feel stupid. You said, you're not stupid, you're human. I stared down. I don't like feeling like this. You said, I know, but you don't have to hide it. I took a shaky breath. And for the first time in my life, in the middle of a moment like that, I asked for love directly. I said, can you just hold me for a second? It came out small, almost like a child asking. My heart pounded like I'd done something wrong. You didn't hesitate. You pulled me into your arms like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And I felt something in me unlock. Because that one sentence, "Can you hold me?" was a sentence I had needed my whole life. But I never said it. I never asked. I just hoped someone would guess. And hoping is exhausting. When you held me, I realized how much energy I had spent being unreadable. How much life I'd wasted trying to be easy. How much love I missed because I didn't know I was allowed to request it. I stayed in your arms and whispered, "I don't want to be strong all the time." You said, "Then don't." I pulled back just enough to look at you. And I said, "Why are you like this?" You smiled. "Like what?" I said, "Like you actually want the real version of me." You looked me in the eyes and said, "Because I'm not dating your mask. I'm loving you. I'm loving you." For more months. Not the polished version, not the "I'm fine" version. You. And in that moment, I understood the difference between attention and love. Attention likes the highlight reel. Love stays for the full movie, including the messy scenes, including the quiet ones, including the ones where you don't look impressive at all. When we went back inside, the world hadn't changed, but I had, because I had asked for love, and I had received it. And my nervous system learned a new truth. That night later, I sat at home and thought about my younger self, the kid who learned to be quiet, teen who learned to be tough, the adult who learned to be fine. And I wished I could go back and tell them, you don't have to earn love by shrinking. You don't have to be perfect to be kept. You don't have to suffer quietly to be respectable. You're allowed to ask. You're allowed to need. You're allowed to say, stay, because the right person won't mock your need. They'll meet it. And then a new fear appeared, a softer fear, a better fear, the fear of losing something good. Because once you experience safe love, you realize how rare it is. And I started thinking, what if I ruin this? What if my old patterns come back? What if I mess up? But then I remembered what? You taught me love isn't proven by never messing up. Love is proven by returning, by repairing, by choosing. So the next time I felt the urge to disappear, I didn't. I told you. I said, I'm pulling away because I'm scared. And instead of looking at me like I was difficult, you said, thank you for telling me. Come here. And I came, and we built something, not in one big moment, but in hundreds of small ones. A text, a hand, a pause, a tell me more, a you can be quiet here, a you're safe, and here's the part that still makes my chest ache in the best way. You didn't just teach me how to be loved, you taught me how to love you back. Because when you're used to hiding needs, you also end up guessing other people's needs instead of asking. You start trying to earn love with mind reading and sacrifice. You start thinking love is proven by suffering quietly. But you showed me love can be simple, direct, honest. And because of you, I've learned to say things like, I appreciate you, I'm proud of you, I need a moment, I miss you, I want to try again. And the biggest one, I don't know how to say this, I'm going to say it anyway. That sentence is my freedom, because it means I don't have to be perfect to be understood. I just have to be real. If you ask me what love is now, I won't give you poetry. I'll give you the truth. Love is being able to ask without shame. Love is being able to need without apology. Love is being able to show your raw parts and not get punished for them. Love is hearing, tell me more when you're terrified of being too much. Love is a person who doesn't just listen to your words, they listen to your nervous system. They listen to your silence. They listen to the story behind the story. And they stay because they want you whole. Not small, not edited, whole. I used to think love was something you stumble into, like luck, like timing, like chemistry. But now I know love is something you choose, daily, in how you respond, in how you stay, in how you make space. And I chose you. Not because you're perfect, but because with you, I don't have to perform. I can just be. And that's the greatest love I've ever known. So if you're listening to this and you've been silent your whole life, if you've been the easy one, if you've been the one who never asks, I want you to hear me. You're allowed to ask for love. You're allowed to say, can you hold me? You're allowed to say, can you reassure me? You're allowed to say, stay. And if someone makes you feel ashamed for needing, that's not love. That's control. That's convenience. That's emotional poverty. Real love doesn't punish you for being human. Real love makes you feel safe enough to be honest. And I didn't learn that from books. I learned it from you. From the way you kept the door open, from the way you didn't rush me, from the way you saw my silence and didn't take it personally, just lovingly, from the way you said, we can learn, and we did. We are, still, because love isn't a destination, it's a practice. And for the first time in my life, I'm not practicing how to be easy, I'm practicing how to be real. And that's the real reveal. That's the thing I didn't know before anything else. I never needed to become lovable. I needed to become honest. And the right love, the safe love, the love that's meant for you, will meet you there.